I'm sure many of you, just like me, were very confused after watching Episode 7, The Force Awakens. And you're probably confused about a great many things, but one of the things you're confused about is the background. Because in Episode 6, we see the rebellion defeat the Empire, and the Empire is gone, and the rebellion has been turned into the New Republic, and it seems like there is peace and prosperity in the galaxy forever, right? And logically, we know that won't hold, but that's what Episode 6 leads us to believe. And then the next movie, Episode 7, The Force Awakens, starts off with an entirely new empire that seems to have taken over the galaxy, and a small rebellion that is there to stop them. And this makes absolutely no sense. It seems like Episode 6 just didn't even happen, because how did you go from there being a new republic to there being an empire? That seems like a very big shift, and Episode 7 just plain does not explain that at all. So that's what I'm going to be explaining on today's episode of Star Wars Nerds and Geeks. Now, of course, the reason that there was this big shift is because Disney wanted Episode 7 to be a direct carbon copy of Episode 4, and so there needed to be an empire and there needed to be a rebellion. So it just made sense to just create these things out of nowhere. It's a very lazy approach, but it was the approach that they took. However, afterwards, novelists ended up creating a backstory to this to actually make it fit into the Star Wars universe and actually make it make some sense. And while it's not the best thing, and while I'd prefer it to have been a little different and to have it explained in the movie, this is the best that we've got. This story starts a long time before the sequels. It starts with Palpatine, just like every single Star Wars movie. It starts with Palpatine, and Palpatine knew that the Empire was liable to fall. Even though he put his time and effort into it, his heart and his soul, even though he really wanted the Empire to succeed, he knew that the Empire could fail because Luke Skywalker was on the side of the rebellion, and he knew how powerful Luke Skywalker was, and he was scared of Luke Skywalker. So Palpatine realized that if the Empire were to fall, that he would need a contingency plan, and so he created the First Order. The First Order was a group of the most loyal officers and soldiers that Palpatine had, and he took these and he sent them off to the Outer Rim, where they could hide away and strike only when the time was right. And so they waited in the Outer Rim, waited while Palpatine was killed on the Death Star, waited while the New Republic was formed, and they waited until the time was right to strike. Meanwhile, in the New Republic, Princess Leia was now a senator. She was Senator Organa, and Senator Organa was trying to wrangle the Senate and figure out how on earth the New Republic could run a galaxy. It's a very, very difficult task, and this is something that has caused most of the wars in Star Wars, is governments failing to figure out how to run a galaxy. In both Legends and canon, this has been a big problem. So Leia's working her butt off to try and figure out how to run this galaxy, and in the midst of this, she discovers the First Order. She's one of the few people to discover the First Order, and so she realizes that the First Order's out there and that the Empire has a chance to come back. And so she comes back to the New Republic and she wants to warn them all about the First Order and how they should wipe out the threat before it arises. However, around this time, it had come out that Darth Vader was Leia's father, and nobody trusted Leia anymore because she was the daughter of one of the most evil men in the galaxy. And so when Princess Leia told them that there was a new threat to the galaxy, that the First Order was coming, that they were the Empire's contingency plan, when she told them all about it, they didn't believe her because they saw her not as the rebel soldier, the rebel general who fought her way to victory. They saw her as the daughter of Darth Vader. So they didn't trust her, and they ignored the signs, and so Princess Leia left on her own to create the Resistance. And the Resistance, much like the First Order, was made up of the most loyal officers and soldiers Leia could find. And so she created the Resistance because the New Republic wasn't going to do anything. So she realized that she had to be the one to take down the First Order. So she took the Resistance and she ended up finding, she tried to fight the First Order, and they had to do it in the same way as the Rebellion, hit and run tactics, just very basic things because they couldn't stand toe to toe with the First Order because the First Order was full of the Empire's strongest resources, and Princess Leia, on the other hand, was on her own. She didn't have the support of the New Republic. So it was much like Episode 4, in which it was a very weak faction going up against a very strong faction. And the rest of the story is history, as you might say. The First Order ends up invading the galaxy slowly enough that the New Republic doesn't really notice, and by the time the New Republic notices, it's too late, and the Starkiller base destroys the New Republic, and then it is Princess Leia and the Resistance against the First Order, and then Episode 8 happens, then Episode 9 happens, then the Resistance wins, and again, it's history. So, in summary, what happened is Emperor Palpatine knew that he was going to die, or he figured he was going to die, and that the Empire was going to collapse, and so he created the First Order so that they could continue on his dream. And then Princess Leia discovered that the First Order was out there, so she tried to warn the Senate, but the Senate didn't listen to her because she was the daughter of Vader. So Leia ended up creating her own army, and then the two armies fought, and then Episode 7, then Episode 8, then Episode 9 happens. The end. And that's pretty much it. This is an interesting story because it's one of these examples of a very gaping plot hole being created by a movie, and the novelist coming up with really brilliant ideas given the circumstances, really good ideas to fill in that plot hole. So, I don't know. I think it's definitely really interesting, the creativity of people. But that's enough for today. This is Star Wars Nerds and Geeks signing off. See you all next time.